On this episode of the InsurTech Geek podcast, talking about how innovation and empathy are key to creating successful outcomes in work comp claims with Greg Hamlin from Berkley Industrial. The InsurTech Geek podcast, powered by JB Knowledge, is all about technology that's transforming and disrupting the insurance world. We'll be interviewing guests and doing deep dives into specific tech we see changing the industry. We're taking you on a journey through insurance tech, so enjoy the ride and geek out. This episode of the InsurTech Geek podcast is brought to you by Terra. Visit terra.insure, that's Terra.insure, to discover how Terra is changing insurance claims and policy management. And we are back with another great episode. My good friend who I met at one of the Reuters insurance conferences, Greg Hamlin from Berkley Industrial. Greg, how you doing, buddy?
I am doing fantastic. How about yourself?
I can't complain. It got a little cold here in Texas for a little bit, and then it circled back around to our usual balmy 70 degrees that we get this time of year. And so your Hawaiian shirt would be appropriate for our weather today. Just finished raining for a couple of days, and I had my first of a couple Christmas parties here at my house last night. So the Christmas celebration season has started, and we're having all kinds of fun with that. So it's been good. How about you?
We're in full gear here too. So I'm in Birmingham, Alabama. So it's a little cooler, but we won't see any snow usually here in the winter. It lasts for about 6 to 8 weeks, and then the tulips are up. But we're definitely doing the Christmas thing. I've got one of my kids' jazz Christmas dinner tonight. So
nice.
It'll be something every night, I think, or at least a few times a week from here to the end of the year. So we just buckle up and go.
Yeah, I love Birmingham. My sister lives in Trussville, and I get to go over there and enjoy that beautiful city. Really, really nice people, great food. You guys got a lot going on in Birmingham. Really,
yeah, we love it.
Yeah, there's a lot to love about it. It's a great place. So enjoy that for sure. Well, let's jump in and give everybody a little background on you. I enjoyed our conversation on stage at the Reuters conference, and I love how you introduce Berkley Industrial as a company that insures dangerous stuff. But the way you say it's better. So why don't you tell me what Berkley does?
Absolutely. So, we're part of WR Berkley, which is our parent company, and they have about 57 different operating units, and every operating unit specializes in something really special. So ours, Berkley Industrial Comp, we are a monoline work comp carrier that focuses on high hazard workers' comp insurance. And I always say, if you can light yourself on fire, blow yourself up, or fall to your death, or be crushed in a mine, we might insure you. So we only look at stuff like that. So if you're a restaurant or a small business owner, we're the wrong company. So my first day on the job here, we had a employee who was eaten by 3 bears in Alaska.
What?
And then I was like, okay, this is going to be a different kind of job than the other workers' comp jobs I've had over my career. So there are no boring days. Dangerous jobs where people are paid very well to do them, that really make America what it is, build the infrastructure that we enjoy.
Yeah, I mean, that's actually the point of insurance, right, is to enable shared risk, in particular on risky activities, right? If everybody was just an office worker like you and I are, then, insurance would be a totally different place. We'd have a lot of paper cuts and push button finger and other things. But the reality is that people have to do dangerous things for society to continue, and to enable them to do those dangerous things. We've got to have insurance so that that they can be covered and they can be restored. Obviously, that's the whole goal, is indemnification. So it's a good thing that insurance exists. But I love the way that you put it. It's always it's like a connection with micro dirty jobs,
It is. Yeah. It's just the other side of it, which is the dangerous part. And we, where we fit in is a lot of these companies, they go across state lines. They're working across the country, and the challenge for them a lot of times is finding coverage. And so they don't want to necessarily have 5 different pools or state funds that they have to deal with, and we can handle them wherever they're at. And then we also have our own specialized safety team that will work with them. So hopefully we can avoid ever having one of those bad days. And then if they do have one, we have a team that's specialized in handling it when it happens.
Awesome. That's great. So tell me about yourself. Like, what's your background? I think you went to Indiana University, Bloomington. You got a degree in criminal justice. So, like, what was the goal? Did you want to go and work in the law enforcement industry, or what was your original objective there?
So good question. So when I went out of college, directly after that, I spent a couple years out west on the Navajo reservation, and then I went to Indiana University. And after I got there, I started out as a business major, and during that time, 9/11 happened. And so when that happened, that really changed what I wanted to do, and I realized there were going to be a lot of opportunities with the war on terror that had just barely begun. And so I was thinking about, how do I have a career that I can sustain? And so that's why I ended up in criminal justice. And then during that time, I was doing non-for-profit fundraising for the university. And my wife at the time, we got married while I was in school and had our first daughter during that time. And so I thought I would stay in non-for-profit fundraising. And I remember meeting with one of the directors at the university to talk about, well, how do I move forward with my career in non-for-profit fundraising? And he said, Greg, you've already got a baby, right? I was like, yeah. He's like, are you going to have more? And I said, my wife says she wants to have 10. And I said, oh, no, that we're going to do that. But I said, I'm thinking 3 to 5. He's like, you got to get out of this. You got to go into business. This isn't going to work for you. And I'm like, well, my degree's in criminal justice. I don't know. And he said, you know what? You've been doing not-for-profit fundraising for 4 years. You know how to talk to people. Go to the career fair and set up with a business. And that's where I met Liberty Mutual out of college and started a career in claims. And actually, it worked out well in that I had people yell at me on the phone trying to do fundraising, and that I also had the criminal justice background for investigating claims. And so it ended up being a really good fit. And I still get to help people, which is what I liked about fundraising, is I felt like I was making an impact. So really, it ended up kind of bringing together all the things I had done in a really neat way.
Absolutely. I ran for city council in 2002, right after I started my business that I'm still running. So I started my company, JB Knowledge, in 2001 in my dorm room, ran for office in 2002, and walking door to door asking for votes. And I did that, tens of thousands of times, completely broke any fear I had of asking for sales. And
that's exactly right.
It's just, anytime if you're smiling and dialing at a foundation raising money, or you're smiling down on a political campaign, it will break down walls in your head that you have about getting things done. And it's really remarkable the impact it can have on you. So I understand and appreciate what you're saying. So you've been at Berkley for a bit now, and you've been there for 5 years at Berkley Industrial Comp. And monoline carriers are kind of unique, right? There's not a lot of them, right? I mean, because inevitably they want to expand revenue. But I mean, the nice thing about being part of the Berkley family of companies is they have specialty companies in all the different lines, and so they really appear to have a different strategy of acquiring or starting these specialty contractors, especially companies, and then allowing them to just dive deep on their niche. Is that accurate?
You're exactly right. The way I always explain it to people, I came up through Liberty, and I have great respect for them. But it is a lot more like the Navy. It's a giant. If there's an iceberg, you're not going to be able to turn on a dime. You're just not. It's too big. Everything's scaled to take advantage of the efficiencies. Whereas the Berkley companies are sort of the opposite, in that we lose some, because we're not scaling necessarily to benefit from size, but we're close to our customers and we're a lot more nimble. So we're a lot more like, I would say, SEAL Team 6 or something than the Navy, in that you've got these small specialized companies that are close to the customer and know exactly what they're doing in their niche, and they can turn on a dime. But we do lose some things with that. So it's a very unique model. I think it may be the only one, at least in the insurance space, in the Fortune 500. So I've really enjoyed it. It's been a great fit to have the financial stability of a strong company, but the ability to make decisions at an operating level is huge. So, and I love that.
Yeah, and something I've really enjoyed, because for a long time I ran a business. JB Knowledge was a general services technology company where we would build software for anybody. And then in 2004, I landed my first insurance client. Was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. And then in 2006, I landed a construction product. We actually started a construction product in bidding, and then we ended up with thousands of companies using that product, and was really fun because I got the deep dive on an industry that you insure very heavily in construction, and understand their problems. And now, like, we're super focused as a company, almost 300 employees here, and we really, it's all insurance. First off, it's only insurance technology, and secondly, it's probably 70% of our book of business is work comp, and the rest is property. So it's very, very focused. So as I've gotten more and more niched out, I really have enjoyed being able to deep dive and understand the topics a lot better. I find it difficult. And I think in this economy, you really have to be a specialist. It's really hard to be a generalist on anything in this economy, in my opinion.
I agree. And, it really helps us because we may look at a risk that somebody else is afraid of, but because we have our own safety people and we know what the job is and we have an understanding, it gives us some leverage that others might not have. In fact, when we had one recently where our underwriting team came to me and said, hey, there's this company that takes bauxite from Jamaica. They ship it up the Mississippi. They process it and turn it into aluminum that you
Wow.
use in people's deodorants. Do you
Oh!
think this is a safe risk? We're like, are you all right with this from a claims perspective? And, we had our safety guy go out there. He took a look at the operation. He's like, oh, I know this entire process. I've done this when I was in mining. And he's like, I've actually been to Jamaica and seen the conveyor belt that the bauxite was running off of. And I remember asking questions about it. So we ended up being the perfect fit for them. And
So you really dive in and get to understand the risk you're underwriting.
That's exactly right. And since they're very complicated, things like that, a lot of other carriers might run from it or be afraid of what's involved. But we've seen everything from companies working with explosives to ammunition, all kinds of things, mining, and we will get in there.
And which I find really interesting, that you dive in when other people are just like, they just make these blanket decisions to not write those kinds of business. And you're like, well, let's look at the rest. So do y'all have a really strong loss control function where you really get
We do.
involved and you're like, okay, if we're going to write this risk, you're going to have to change the way you do this.
It is a partnership. It is a partnership for sure. And, we can usually tell pretty early. We like to do a lot of front end work to make sure it works, but we expect, return to work programs. We expect partnership. We also will pick up the phone though. So when that insured has a claim, they're going to talk to a real person. We're going to work them through their problems. It's not going to be press 3, press 9, go on hold, leave a message. You don't know who your adjuster is. And we've even seen that on the flip side where, market changes may cause some package carrier to come in and take a look at one of our insureds. And, we can't price things super cheap because these are dangerous risks. And so sometimes we will see someone leave. And I can think of one example where they called us back a month or two later saying, hey, I need to have this file transferred to a different adjuster. This adjuster has no communication skills. They have no idea what we do. They're not answering their phone. They can't follow directions. And then we took a look at it and I was like, well, that's actually your new carrier. that you moved to.
Huh?
And so they'll still call us, with jurisdictional
You're like,
questions and things like that, because we'll answer the phone.
listen,
And
listen, buddy. You want to, this claim's going to stay with this carrier, so you're going to have to deal with them.
that's right. So it really is. We see all of our insureds. It's a partnership, and we pride ourselves in being able to have small caseloads, answer the phone, we focus on outcomes, and we want to make sure that we do things right from the beginning.
That's great. That's really great. So we talked about a couple things in the interview on stage that I just want to kind of deep dive on here. Tell me about empathy and what role empathy plays, and then we're going to talk about technology, because I want to get to tech, but I feel like
Yep.
you have to deal with the people before you can really implement a lot of technology. Sometimes, especially in your business, and you just described the exact reason why. Like when the fit hits the shan, right? People want to
Right.
people want to talk to a human, and they want to know that like a person is handling the situation that's going to be handled. So let's talk about tell me about empathy and how you guys really take a strategic approach to empathy and what that ends up manifesting itself like during the claims process.
That's something I love talking about. So first of all, I think technology is really, really important, and these two things go together better than I think a lot of people would think. Technology is really great at doing things that allow our adjusters to be able to spend time building relationships of trust, being there when people need them, walking people through very complicated processes that are state driven by statute. When we can use the technology piece to automate and simplify and cut down the places where there's inefficiencies, then we have more time to focus on empathy. And so about 3 or 4 years ago, we as a team came together and created what we call our empathetic resolution model. And the concept is pretty simple, that if we treat people with dignity and respect, and we listen to them, and we talk to them, and we try to understand what they're going through, we're going to gain cooperation. And if we gain cooperation, we're going to get better outcomes. And if we get better outcomes, two things are going to happen. The injured worker is going to benefit from a better recovery, and it's going to cost less. And I would rather pay up front my adjusters to have lower case counts and the ability to talk to these people and walk them through what needs to happen, as well as to pay the physicians who are going to get them the best outcomes, than to nickel and dime things throughout the entire process and then end up finding out we're having 2-3 surgeries. They're never coming back to work. We have an adversarial relationship that we can't negotiate a settlement on. So when we started that process, we opened it up to the team and said, what could we do different? How do we change this model that everybody knows how workers' comp's been handled and turn it into something different? And so that's where the idea came from. And then we've been plugging in different ideas almost as spokes on a wheel to that concept of how do we change that?
And so let's give me some of the ideas on how this is really transformed. And this is really wanting to get at is like, first off, just deciding to do that and deciding to experiment and deciding to step out of your comfort zone is major in a big organization, right?
Yep.
So let's just acknowledge that first, that it's no small feat to decide that, hey, we're going to come up with new ideas all the time and try implementing them. This entire industry exists on stability and consistency. So new ideas aren't necessarily always rewarded well, right? So, I mean, just the way it is. I've been 20 years in this, and I've seen that, right? So sometimes new ideas can put insurance companies out of business, and that's the other part that they have to really be careful of. So there is some legitimate credence to that. So walk me through what this looks like and what some of the ideas are that you guys have implemented.
Awesome. Yeah. So we look at everything. And again, I think you've hit on something really important there is you always want to try new ideas on a small scale and then, build out from them. And a lot of times the best ideas come from iterating off of something small. So some of the ideas that came up, one is we need to change the way we communicate when we send out our first letters. We realize like all insurance companies basically send letters to injured workers that sound like an attorney wrote them. My brother's an attorney. I love attorneys, but they don't. The letters actually weren't very empathetic. So We work with the team to change that. And I'll just give you a little example. Our letter now starts out saying, "My name is so-and-so. I'll be assisting you with your workers' compensation claim. Being injured at work is not easy, but I want to reassure you that I'm here to help make your claims experience as smooth, as streamlined as possible." So, I mean, we just start out acknowledging they're going through something hard. And then everything in the letter is to help them know how to get the benefits that they're entitled to and to make sure they have what they need. So that was step one. The next thing that kind of connected to that, one of the adjusters said, "Well, what if we sent flowers to our injured workers?" And so I thought, well, that's a great idea. But then we started thinking about our injured workers. A lot of these guys are like electricians, like linemen, coal workers, and so we started thinking, well, that might be a little weird. Like if you're having surgery and you're this rough coal miner, you get some roses from your carrier. So we came up with the idea of sending cookies. We started sending cookies post surgery.
Man,
To
I
our
don't know
injured
anybody who
workers.
doesn't like cookies. Is all I'm going to say.
Right. That's exactly right. And we've had some of these guys call us up almost in tears saying, "Hey, nobody's done anything like that. Like that meant a lot to my family." And it's not very expensive, but it's those little thoughtful things that you do that build relationships that help people to understand that we're here for them. We text. That's how people want to communicate. They want to text. So we've integrated texting into our communication. We try to meet people where they're at. So on our website, if you want to use chat, you can use chat. If you want phone numbers, we have direct phone numbers to every adjuster on our website. It's not a secret. So we try to look for ways to close that barrier between being a insurance company that you hear about when you hear about plaintiff attorneys talking about how you're going to be taken advantage of. We try to change that model to really engaging with them to get an outcome.
And let's talk about technology implementation and getting workers back, because there's a problem in physical therapy, right? Getting injured workers back to work involves them going to physical therapy often. And going to just the PT is not enough. You actually have to do work at home.
You do.
And
You do.
I've been in PT multiple times. Unfortunately, I've had multiple surgeries. 2 on my ankles, 1 on my tailbone. I've had all kinds of stuff I've had. Unfortunately, I'm very active, and I've just torn and broken some things being active, and none of it at work. Obviously, I sit at a desk. I mean, if you tear an Achilles while you're sitting at a desk, you're doing something really weird.
Right.
And so I found I had to do the exercises at home. I didn't like doing them, so that I'm turns out I'm totally normal because of that. So tell me how you got through that with technology.
Sure. So, very similar to you, I've hurt my shoulder a few times and went through physical therapy, and they gave me the TheraBands, and I want to say I used them, but if I'm being honest, they sat on my dresser, and I did go to my physical therapy, but it really slowed my recovery in retrospect. And one of the things that I think we struggle with in the United States with our current healthcare model is there's really 2 models that go on in the United States. There's the do it for you and the do it yourself models. And we don't really have a do it with you model. I give the example of my wife. We've had 6 kids, so we did not get to 10. And 6 is the end.
6 is still incredible, by the way.
Yeah. But so I give that example, and they were all C-sections. So I know that whole process real well, having been through this. And when my wife's had one of our babies, there's somebody there to take the trash out, to make sure that she's getting all the medications she needs. There's someone bringing her food. There's somebody wiping down the floor. Every single thing's being done for her while she's there. And then when you come home, for anybody who's had a new baby, it's like, oh, now I'm totally on my own. And I have this screaming child, and I've got to figure out how to do it. And if your wife's had a C-section, she can't really even move around much. And so that's a really good example of a do it for you versus then do it on your own. And our healthcare model is set up the same way. We have people who have surgeries where everything's taken care of, and then they suddenly come home and they're expected to know how to do all the things they're supposed to do in their own recovery. A lot of the people we have, they're hardworking individuals. A lot of them might even have an 8th grade education. And so if you've been through physical therapy, they give you this instruction book, like a piece of paper that says, do these things at home, and you're supposed to know how to do those. And so one of the things we started doing is we use a company called Plethy that actually has a adhesive sensor, and it connects to an app on the injured worker's phone, which does a lot of things. One is it reminds them, hey, it's time to do it's time to do your home exercise. And then the next thing it does is it has videos that show how to do the exercise. And then when you're doing the exercise with the video, it will beep at the range of motion when you've hit the top and then when you've hit the bottom, and it's going to count the reps. And so what that does is create some engagement with the injured worker at home to help support what they're trying to do in their own recovery. And I think in general, that's a great example of how technology can be integrated into someone's recovery to get more engagement and find a way to kind of bridge that gap between do it yourself and have it done for you.
Yeah, it's an interesting, like, I work out more because Apple Fitness reminds me to close my bands, and because then when I do my workout, it monitors me and it gives me feedback on how I'm doing during the workout. That actually encourages me to work out more. So I know that for sure, right?
Oh yeah,
that it gives me feedback. Now they could get even more interesting if they had you mount your phone and then had the camera on. They could tell you if you're actually doing the workout now, because Apple
right.
baked all kinds of wonderful things into the iPhone. The iPhone. And okay, let's give Android a little credit.
I'm an iPhone guy, so you don't have to.
Yeah, smartphones in general are probably one of the most transformative technologies in human history, because you have this incredible multi-tool that we're really just beginning to understand how to tap into the potential of, and when you've got cameras and LiDAR on a phone, you can do a lot on monitoring. And monitoring in a good way. Now, you found something interesting, though, that they actually respond better when somebody else gives it to them, right? And that's, I think,
We did, and part of that goes back to trust. When we were trying to onboard our injured workers initially with the program, one of the barriers is a lot of people felt like maybe they were worried that we were going to be spying on them, which is not the goal at all. But what we did is we ended up partnering with a couple of physical therapy networks, and then their clinicians make those referrals now. And that's gone a lot better because people have a little bit more trust with their medical providers. And it also gives the data to their medical providers so they can work with them. And it's unfortunate, but the industry as a whole, there's a reputation that we have to fight, that we really are there to help people get their best outcomes. And we fight that all the time. But it's, in this case, going through a provider makes a big difference.
Yeah, makes a huge difference. I just think in general, I think it's important too that the actual healthcare provider be knowledgeable about what's going on, can coach and
Yep.
guide them through it. It's a lot more than just who does it; it's how they do it. But the technology itself is really impressive. There's some really great systems out there that can really assist in the analysis of not only if the movements are being done, but if they're being done correctly as well. And I think that's something that's really important to look at too. Is like, if this movement is done correctly, the recovery rate, the return to work rate is so much higher, right? And I think that's important to look at too, right?
It is, and we've even used it with one of our catastrophic injuries where we have an injured worker who's a paraplegic, and he can't self-transfer because he's extremely heavy. And he was heavy at the time of the injury, but then, and look, I can imagine what this would be like. He's in a bed. He can't do a whole lot. And so, one of the things he's done is he's often was ordering Uber Eats because there's nothing to do.
Yeah.
He's just sitting there in his bed and can play video games. That's about it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And what's sad is we have very similar injuries where the person lives completely independent. We modify their car, we modify their home, and they have a really good quality of life as a paraplegic. And in his case, because he can't self-transfer because he's, over 400 pounds, that causes all these other problems. And so we engage. He actually loves video games. We had this company come up with an exercise program with his physical therapist that he could do every day with his arms. And they started tracking that. They started monitoring that. And that with several other things that have been working together, we've gotten his weight down to the point where he can look at bariatric surgery, which hopefully we can get him to the point where he can live on his own. And so one of the things we found through that program, because they also monitor it with a physical therapist, at one point his exercises all stopped. And we wondered, like, well, what's going on? We didn't even know. The company that manages the sensor called him to check on him and found out he had been hospitalized for some bed sores and a urinary infection. We wouldn't have known any of that. And it's because the data started showing that, hey, his exercises suddenly stopped out of nowhere where he was doing it every day. So then we were able to engage and have a nurse involved and do different things to make sure. But the facility didn't call us. We found out through the technology. And so I think there's some things there that we'll see as there's more integration where we really can get ahead of some of these problems and maybe have some outside the box solutions to some problems.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what I'm excited about. I've got a company I met recently called Zerapy, Zerapy, that does some really interesting things with monitoring worker movement during their PT at home, and even during the PT at the physical therapist. And that's the other thing is, if you go to a physical therapy, the therapist can't watch you the whole time. And so even the physical therapist needs assistance in monitoring this. And this is a really critical thing in getting workers back to work. So I'm excited about the prospect of that, but I'm also excited about wearables in general and just telling you what was going on at the time of the injury, right? I mean, these little guys, these little devices, and for those that are not on video, I'm holding up an Apple Watch, tell you everything about motion data. So you can really identify sound and motion, and if they have slip, trip, fall sensors now, which are incredibly helpful. There's been incredible amounts of studies done that the faster you get to an injured worker and the faster you get them into medical care, the more likely it is that you're going to be able to restore them quickly. It's a total package, right? Yep. They need to be managed immediately and often to drive a successful outcome. And technology can really help us a lot with that immediacy. I'm excited about
I think so. And I think even on the safety side, there's going to be a lot that's going to change, and hopefully that avoids some of these accidents ever having happened. We know most of our injuries happen from, we always say, wheels, gravity, and complacency. And it's usually those three things
wheels, gravity, and complacency. Wow. I love that. I got to write that down. I'm going to give you. Did someone come up with that so I can quote that properly?
Our safety team, our safety team. That's the quote that they always lean on. It's those three things. You focus on those three things, you'll knock out a lot of injuries. And I think there's opportunities where technology can help close the gap on all three of those things if you start to think about them. But those are where we see most of our injuries. Really, it's very rare that it's every now and then you'll have something crazy that is just totally unavoidable. But for the most part, if you could control those three things, you have a pretty good safety program.
So you said that texting with claimants has been super important. Has that been a total game changer in the claims process?
It's been huge. I mean, I think about myself now. I mean, how many of us get a call from an area code we don't recognize and we're like, I'm not answering that. We take one look at our phone and we figure it's a telemarketer. Well, that's the same problem we're dealing with, except for we're trying to get them to a doctor, or we're trying to make sure they get their check they need. And if they don't answer the phone, we can't get hold of them. And so we found texting works so much better in that our injured workers will respond to that, and we can get them updates pretty quickly. They can update us pretty quickly. We can remind them about appointments. I mean, all those things are just part of our day-to-day life. That's how people communicate.
Yeah, absolutely. It is. And I think that's an important technological innovation, even though it's an old tech innovation. It's new to the claims process in general. There's still a lot of people who are reluctant to use texting with claimants, but I think it's critical and an important innovation. What about loss control? What do you see as the successful components of a really great loss control program? Because that's something that you're really involved in. Obviously, you're trying to prevent the losses in the first place, and
Yeah, I think
you said that it's again, wheels, gravity, complacency. Those are the three things you're trying to mitigate. But what does that look like?
Yeah, so I think the number one thing is a safety culture, and that's easy to say, but it's a lot harder to build. We'll have our safety guys go out and visit. Our director of safety shared an example of a time he went out to pre-inspect an insured, and he goes out to see them, and he says, "Well, I'm here, to go through, take a look at your program." And he said he throws this huge safety manual down. It's covered in dust. He's like, "This is our program." And so he's flipping through it. He's like, "Okay, well, it says here you do audiograms. You have your audiogram test?" He's like, "What?" And he said, "Well, it says here you do them twice a year." And he's like, I just bought that book. We don't do all that stuff." And then he takes them out to the shed and says, "Look at all this safety stuff. I got this at a flea market. We've got all these guardrails and scaffolding." And our safety person says, "So this is everything, huh?" And he goes, "Oh yeah, this is all of it." And he said, "And you have 3 teams out in the field right now, right?" And he said, "Yeah." And this is all in here, right? And he goes, "Yeah." And he said, he called the underwriter and said, run from this account. Do not close this account." And he said a couple years later, within a year or two, they had a fatality. And he said it was not a surprise because they weren't actually about keeping their employees safe. They were doing whatever they thought they needed to do to keep OSHA happy or to keep whoever the inspectors were happy, but they weren't actually doing the things that will help protect your employees. So
So they bought it. They bought a safety template and a loss control template, and then, but they didn't actually implement it.
no.
Yeah.
And so it's really believing in it and having your staff believe in it and understanding the importance of lockout and tag out and just taking care of when you get to the point where other employees are stopping each other and saying, "Hey, wait a minute, that's not safe." That's a big deal. We had one injury, a fatality that happened with a company that they had certain lanyards they were supposed to wear when they were doing roofing. And that day they were short 3 lanyards, and the foreman who was supposed to bring them was coming in another hour or two. So then they just decided, well, rather than have some wear them and some not, nobody would wear them. And the guy fell off the roof and died. And so it's those simple, small decisions. They should have just waited, but people are busy and then they're in a hurry and they take a shortcut. And that shortcut ends up resulting in
Killing
somebody
somebody.
losing their life.
Somebody died.
Yeah.
Yeah. The consequences are pretty severe when bad things happen, and work comp deals with that. Every day, right? We're dealing with some pretty horrible accidents sometimes, and it's certainly motivates everyone involved in this industry to stay focused on the end objective, which is getting keeping workers safe and getting them back home safely, and then if they do get injured, restoring them back to their original condition quickly or better.
That's right.
The interesting thing I think some people forget too is that if you have a really good safety and loss control program, you can actually return workers to home better than they arrived at the office. If you have a really
Yeah, you can.
if you have a really good stretch and flex program in the morning, they can actually return home more flexible and stronger. I mean, there is some really good evidence that you can really focus on the comprehensive worker health on the front end. So it's always been interesting to study that. Well, let's close out with this. What's your favorite, or what's the next big innovation you think is going to have an impact on work comp?
That's a great question. I think there's a lot of talk about AI, and I do think that that's something that's going to continue to be something that's going to change the way we think about things. But what I hope is that the technologies that's changing insurance will actually allow employees to spend more time doing what matters, which is building relationships of trust, helping people. And hopefully the technology piece enables us to spend time doing the things that are the most important. And so I don't know what that looks like. I think it's moving pretty quickly. You may have a better feel than me, but I would say the thing that I hope doesn't get lost in all of that is the importance of people. And when we're talking about recovery, those communication skills are so important. And I hope that technology enables us to do a better job of that.
Exactly. I hope so too. My goal in building claims and policy software and building all the custom software we build around people's systems, because we do both, right? We have our own claims and policy platform for comp, and we've got our own services group. My goal is always to automate the boring menial stuff so that claims adjusters and policy administrators and people in the insurance business, loss control specialists, can focus on the people, right? And focus on actually making their lives better by getting rid of the BS tasks that consume a lot of their time. Right? That for me, that as a technologist, you've got to have like a reason, and this is why I've dedicated
100%.
2 decades of my life and hopefully a lot more to technology, because I think legitimately we can make people a lot happier at work and we can deliver a lot more value per hour of work. And so it's just my reason for being, and I think it's a good focus for us to have in technology in general.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more.
Yeah. Well, Greg, if I end up over there for the holidays, because I've got some great family members there in Birmingham, I'll definitely hit you up. Maybe go to Bottega. It's one of my favorite places over there. And
there you go.
And I tell you what, you guys have a few restaurants now that I will say came from Louisiana and Texas. You got Superior Grill, which I used to work at in Baton Rouge. You've got Buc-ee's now in Birmingham. Which remember, that's an Aggie-owned business. So
yep, it is.
I was hanging out with the owner of Buc-ee's at the last Aggie football game. Really cool guy named Arch Applin. He's the Beaver, that's his actual.
Okay.
So I was hanging out with the Beaver last week at the Aggie football game. He just donated $50 million to build A&M a school of hospitality. And so he was hanging out in one of the suites there, and I ran into him. And you also have got, let's see, what else just opened up in Alabama? I'll have to think about it, because you got a couple other ones that have spread over there that I think you get to enjoy. So enjoy our Texas and Louisiana cuisine and stores, and I look forward to hopefully seeing you next time I'm over there.
Sounds great.
And
great visit with you, James.
Real quick before we go, what's your podcast?
Sure. My podcast is called Adjusted. And it's been around for about 3 years now, and we focus on workers' compensation topics. But the whole goal is looking for people who are changing workers' comp.
Yeah, Adjusted. So for those of you out there in listener land, go check out Greg's podcast, Adjusted, and listen to that. Check it out. I'm sure it's in all the major podcast directories, right?
It is. Absolutely.
Yeah. So I've got it up right now in the Apple podcast directory, and just want to make sure there it is, Adjusted Berkley Industrial Comp, and go check that out. It's been got a lot of back episodes to listen to out there. And so we'll hopefully everybody will go check you out. Well, appreciate it, Greg. And thank you out there in listener land to tuning in to Geek Out, our interview with Greg Hamlin from Berkley Industrial Comp. We'll see you in the next episode. This has been the InsurTech Geek Podcast, powered by JB Knowledge, jbknowledge.com. The InsurTech Geek Podcast is all about technology that's transforming and disrupting the insurance world. I've been your host, James Benham, that's jamesbenham.com, with co-host Rob Galbraith at endofinsurance.com. Thank you for joining us today. Look forward to meeting up again. We're taking you on a journey through InsurTech, so enjoy the ride and geek out.